Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So this video is going to have two beginnings. I started this video yesterday. This is Thursday, January 18th. It's 10:08 in the nighttime, and this video won't be up till Saturday. But I had this sort of epiphany, and I've talked about this before. And I made a playlist. Well, first, let me just say this to end all kinds of speculation based on the title. And I'm going to call this I'm Dying, which, is provocative, but it's not that I'm dying tomorrow or I've got some terminal diagnosis, but we all have a terminal diagnosis, right? We're all dying. Every one of us is dying. We're all in the process of dying. I was thinking about this when you go to the doctor and they say you have 6 months to live. Or you get some sort of disease, stage 4 cancer, something like this, where your days are numbered. But all our days are numbered. Like we have a time when we're going to die, whenever that is. And, maybe you could figure it out astrologically or, whatever. But there is a point where your life is going to end immediately after you're born. And so you're in the process of dying even as a baby, right? Before you've even really begun to live, you're going to die. And so your death can be the day after you're born or 80 years after you're born, but the process is all the same, right? But I was thinking about this because I've said these words in a similar fashion, and I'm hoping I remember to put this in. In fact, maybe one person, could leave a comment reminding me to put this in the playlist. I made a playlist. I made a video that after let's say I disappear or die or something, that there would be these videos up, and I, made a video ahead of time because why wait till that I die to release it? Which, how would I be able to do that anyway? So I had this thought for a while that I'd make a video in case I died, for some uninspected reason or, I disappeared or whatever happened. Like I couldn't make videos anymore. And there would be a video I could, put up at put it in my will or something, have someone in my family put it up and, it would be there for people. Then I said, I might as well release it now. Like, why wait? Why wait to, say the things that you want to say, to the people who watch these videos. And there's a playlist here somewhere. I might as well go look it up and find out the actual name. Anyway, the playlist is called Goodbye Videos to Watch After I Die or Can't. I guess it goes on from there. Probably something like I can't make videos anymore. And so I'm going to put that. Hopefully I'll put this. There's 4 videos in there. I only remember the one. But if one person can leave a comment reminding me to put it in the playlist, that'd be great. But I don't need 100 comments, obviously. I just need one. But I had this sort of revelation, I was thinking about this, because I said this before. I've had these sort of, thoughts before. But I had this revelation, when you're going to die because you have some physical ailment or, you're going to go off to war, there's something, imminent in your life where you're aware that death is possible. And I've had that a few times in my life where the idea, there's a possibility of death, right? But there is every time you go on the highway or, there's so many different ways you can die, right? That, you don't think about, but they're there. And, one of those things is going to get you someday, whatever it might be, disease, old age, your heart. Of course, now with COVID and the bloop, right, there's the possibility that your heart will stop at any moment. I've had some heart issues over the past couple of years. If you thought about that, and not in some goth way, some Eddie Munster or, the Addams Family way or some, where you're celebrating death or you're, any of these things. But you just thought about it every day that you're dying. Like every day you have, the chance of dying and that it's going to happen someday. Like you just had that thought. Not, not that you, dwell on it, you worry about it, you're scared of it, but just had the thought, right? That your death is inevitable. Like you woke up every day and just thought it, once during the day, my death is inevitable. I'm in the process of dying, because all these things go hand in hand, life and death, right? Joy and pain, misery and happiness, all these things, right? And, one of the problems with what we're trying to do here in this society is control things that can't be controlled, right? We're trying to prolong things that shouldn't be prolonged. The death of your youth. Like you have things that change and die all the time. And as you get older, you see it more and more. Things that you used to be able to do, you no longer can do. And your mortality is there, right? When you're a young person, it doesn't matter. Take, for example, like a beautiful young woman, right? Someone who's, in their teens as they get older, and they have privileges because of their beauty, right? Some young girl has privileges because of her beauty, and she squanders it, right? She parties, she doesn't eat proper foods, right? Doesn't, take care of her skin, whatever it might be, and is able to, manipulate men and have relationships and monetize her beauty in some way, right? Make a fortune off her beauty, like all these Instagram models and these all these girls that do this stuff. But one day she looks in the mirror and sees some lines and wrinkles in her face, and it doesn't feel so good anymore. Like the party and the drugs, the alcohol, things, bad men, whatever it is, catch up to her. All these models and Hollywood starlets, met an expiration date, and they all of a sudden their beauty means something to them, right? Now that they know they're going to lose it, and they're starting to get ugly outside because they're ugly inside. So their insides are starting to display on their faces, right? Or this, this is one particular person. So the ugliness is starting to display on this, this not so young woman's face, right? And now she starts buying creams and doing research and exercising and eating in a different way, trying to, retain something that she's losing, right? Everyone's, this is the problem of life, but you can't, there's no amount of plastic surgery. There's no amount of physical, whatever you're going to do, supplements and all these things you can do to keep yourself from aging, right? So it's inevitable. She's going to lose something. She had something, didn't appreciate it, and then once it was on its way out, she was desperate to keep it. But that's the thing about life. Like whenever you have something, whenever you have something that you love, a person or a job or stuff in your physical material possessions or places you like to go, vacation or whatever, whenever you have something, you're in the process of losing it, right? You're going to lose it in one way or another. Everything is going to be lost as your body disappears from this planet when you die, or the people around you die, things that you love die, whatever it might be. Everything is changeable, and we're going through a period of change, and all of us are resisting it because there's things we don't want to give up, right? Things that we don't want to, things that we don't think we can live without, things that make life worth living, right? And people don't live because they're trying to retain something that is slipping through their fingers, right? And of course, time is the biggest aspect of this. And you don't see it when you're young because you think you have so much time left, and you do maybe for most young people have lots of time left, but not all of them, right? Some of them, their lives are cut short. But when you realize you are going to lose something, you start to grip it tighter, right? You start to hold on to it, and you try to prevent that thing from happening, right? But you can't because it's inevitable. And instead of enjoying what needs to be enjoyed today and recognizing that there's a time limit for everything, right? You look at these women who have engaged in plastic surgery and done everything to retain their physical beauty, and they turn themselves into monsters, and everybody does that. Men who, are scared of death or, are trying to prevent their death or prevent change and trying to retain things that should have, everything's meant to flow. Things come and go, things, things flow through your life. You get what you need when you need it, and then it's just a burden. Like when you no longer need something, it's a burden, right? A tool. You pick up a tool, you use the tool, you put the tool away. You don't carry your saw with you everywhere you go, just in case you have something to saw, right? You go get your saw when you need to saw something. You go get your hammer when you need to hammer something, right? Whatever it might be, whatever your tools are. You lug these things around with you all the time in the case that you need them. Well, that's no way to live, right? Because there's things that you're going to, need, you need something every day. You can't carry everything with you. You only need what you need on that day. And people go through a process of you have goals. And you obtain that goal, you reach your goals, you accomplish your goals. And then once you've done that, you've acquired whatever you are seeking, you enter the maintenance part of it, right? In the Hindu tradition, they have Brahma, the creator. They have Vishnu, the maintainer, the preserver, right? The preservation. And then you have Shiva, the death, right? The destruction. So you have a creation, and you have preservation and maintenance, and then you have the death of something, right? You build a house. First you're in the creative process. You have an architect, or you're an architect. You design the house. You acquire the materials. You acquire the tools and the help. You put the house together. You have the house, and then you decorate the house, and you do whatever you're going to do to make the house worth living in, and then you turn it into a home, and you have a family in there, and then you're in the maintenance portion. You're keeping the house together, and at some point everything starts to decay. It gets mold on it. Time has its way, and the house might be, long after your death. It might be your children or whatever, whatever it is. But eventually it has to be torn down, or nature takes its toll, and it just wears away and decays and becomes, a house for animals or whatever, whatever is there, the foundation and whatever is left over. And when you look at life in the way that you're going to die every day, like that you're in the process of dying, and things that you have, you might be the last day you have something. And that's where the gratitude and appreciation comes in. This may be the last day that you see your significant other. Like, this has happened to people, right? It happens to people all the time where, I just covered this heart attack. This coach had a heart attack, and the Golden State Warriors basketball coach. And he was in a team dinner with other, the players and the coaches, and they were they were in Utah about to play a, NBA game, and the guy just drops dead of a heart attack, right? This is happening now all the time to people, where, they have a conversation with somebody, and then they don't see that person alive again. It's more prevalent than ever. We're at a time where death is just around us, and it's, and it's shocking deaths, sudden deaths, right? Unexpected deaths. And you have an argument with somebody, and then you go to see them, or you get a call and they're dead, right? Car accident or something. And, these things are, it's painful. But if you looked at it where, that this could happen, like these things could happen, just, not dwell on it, not, fear it, and try to control it, but just, have the possibility that could happen, it would change your life. I was thinking about my two puppers. My wife and I got these puppies, they Papillons live, the last Papillon my wife had, last dog that we had, Farley, lived till she was 15 or so, 14 or 15. So they live pretty long, little dogs, perpetual puppies. And they're great. They're part of our life. And, I can't imagine life without them, but that's only 10 years away. My kids, when they were little, they used to play great. My two oldest, one Anna and her older brother, they were Irish twins. They were born on consecutive Mother's Days, and they would just play forever. They had these animal figures, like I bought them those little, I had these things when I was a kid, like little model animals and dinosaurs and, plastic, like something you get at a museum. And then they had other, action figures and stuffed animals. And, they're 5, 6, 7 years old. I don't know how old they were. And they used to take the animals and march them in a line, like it was, 50, 100 animals, and they would just march them throughout the house and then outside. And, we had some acres and things, and they were just all over the place, and they would stop and play games. And, my daughter Anna was a storyteller. She's committed suicide, right? But when she was young, she was a great storyteller, and she had a great imagination, and they would play these games, and they would say things like, when it was nighttime, they would say, sun goes down, moon comes up, and then they would, pretend all their animals were sleeping. Then a minute later, they'd pretend it was day again. They go, sun comes up, moon goes down, and they would play, right? And, I stopped and watched them, I observed this over the years, but I didn't, I didn't cherish it like I, maybe should have, right? I appreciated it, but, marriage to my ex and, the hell that was, and all the things were going on, and the stress, and it was just a bad time. And, now one of my, children is no longer with us, and the other two are estranged, and even the one I have with me, our relationship isn't like it was when they were kids, right? They all have their own lives and adults now. I don't have regrets in the sense that, I don't know how it could have been any different because of the way I felt at that time, right? But, I think about these things all the time, the good times and the joyful times we had as a family, and there weren't, that many, and the older the kids got, and the The worse the marriage between my ex and I got, and the worse her, fits were, and her, threatening suicide, and whenever we had an argument and things, I had to hide all the knives and all the stuff I went through with that, right? It was just, it wasn't effing enjoyable, right? It was a hard time for all of us, and so that's what the kids will remember. But for me, I remember these good times that we have, great moments. My daughter Anna, there was a time where she could always catch animals. Like she went over the first cow that we ever got. There was a family that had a cow, and they were milking a dairy cow, and they wanted to sell it to us. I went to India and I had sort of an experience there, and I came back. I was like, we're going to get the cow. We got the cow, and the family had chickens, and they also had a chicken that went broody and came back with 12 chicks. A chicken can go broody, and they disappear, and they sit on a brood of eggs, and they hatch out some chicks. And she, the woman told a story about her kids were a little bit older. Anna was about 3 or 4, and she was with their, all of our kids were, they were born in a 5-year period. 4 kids were born in 5.5 years. And so, they're all relatively young. And she said they had these chicks running around their house and, running around their yard. They're trying to catch them. And none of them could catch them. And Anna came with 2 in either hand. Like she was just, she went after these animals like she was a predator and she could catch them. And then one time we got ducks later on. We ended up getting chickens from that family and our first cows. And we bought some ducks, and our ducks went into our neighbor's pasture, and there was, tall grass. Really, we had really tall grass in our pasture. It was like spring, and there was tall grass that the neighbor hadn't hayed yet, so there's really tall grass there. He was, he hayed his field. He cut it into hay for his horses and some cows or something. And she said, I'll go catch the ducks. And I was like, no, there's no way you're going to do that. And she had, red hair, and I saw like this, the sun was glinting off her hair, and she was smaller. She had these boots on. She was smaller than the grass, and every once in a while her head would pop up, and you could see her hair, her hair, the sun bouncing off of it. And then a duck would pop up. Like, these 2 ducks she was chasing. And I was like, there's no way she's going to catch them, right? She's running after them. We had 3 acres of land, and there was like probably another 10 acres on the other side. She ran down and, went to the other pasture where the ducks were. And, when I was watching her jump up, you see her jump up every once in a while, and you see the ducks jump up, and then all of a sudden they just stopped. And I could see the grass moving, and she came up, and she had 1 duck in either hand, right? She just caught them both. It was like hilarious. Like, she was just, no one else that I knew could do that, right? None of the other kids, I certainly couldn't. At that time, she was probably like 7, 8 years old or whatever it was. But she could just, she had a knack for that stuff. And there was these good times with all the kids and, times I remember and whatever it was. Even stuff, to do with my ex. There were good days where as a family, there were good times. Mostly not, but, they were there. And now that's basically all gone. It's in the past, right? It's like a past life. And, I don't have regrets in that sense, or even my younger days. Of course, I would have utilized my time differently had I been, younger now. If I knew what I know now, all the experiences I have, I would be a different person. I'd make different choices, and I'd spend my time more wisely. But that's the process of life. But what I'm getting at here is, another title to this video could be "Today is the Day." That's when you think about it like that. Today is the day. Like today could be the last day, right? Today is the day. Like every day you live the day. This is the day, right? And whatever the day is, you live it like it's important. Whatever you're doing, whether it just be cooking meals or, it's like being in the moment. And, the mindfulness meditation is kind of the opposite of what Saj Marg meditation is. But in terms of just, appreciating what you have and the opportunity that's in front of you, that there's no throwaway days. There's no, even though things seem mundane and they seem routine and they seem like, I just want to, you're killing time and watching the clock. There was an Adam Sandler movie where he had a remote control, kind of stupid movie, but it had a good premise, where he would hit a button and fast forward through the down times, and then the remote control would remember that he fast forwarded through this thing, and it started to automatically fast forward through all of these things, right? And, like before I know it, he was fast forwarding through everything. and then just his whole life flew by. So, anyways, I want to just share that with you. And I got this other, this is going to. So, before I get to this other introduction I did yesterday, I had some more thoughts, some of which I had last night, and I've forgotten, but I'm hoping if I start talking about this, it'll come back to me. If not, maybe later after when I do a voiceover at the end of this thing, which I probably will. And so the first thing, in terms of the teachings of the Sajmark system, and when I say something like that, the teachings of the Sajmark meditations, it's not the system, it's whether it's true or not, right? When you think about scientific teachings or biblical teachings, they don't own the truth, right? If they stumble on the truth and they talk about it, then, it's the truth. The truth is itself is, you can't copyright the truth, or, that's just some legal whatever, or trademark it. If there's something that's, that's truthful, you just happen to stumble on it, right? And this is a truth that I learned through the Sajmark system, that we have created our present from our past. And I think most people, I don't know anybody who wouldn't agree with that, but you're manifesting your present has been manifested from your past. And your past has also conditioned you to affect you in your present. You're making decisions in your present based in past experiences. So the past has, a stronghold on the present, right? In terms of what decisions you've made and actions that you've done and thoughts and, intentions you've created, that you have now manifested your present circumstances and condition. We've done that individually and collectively. And then right now in our present, we're manifesting and creating our future. And our lens has been, the lens in which we view the world has been conditioned and warped and, made into something by the past. And I've talked about that before. Hopefully you've heard that before from other sources, but it's something to think about, right? The problem is, and I haven't ever talked about this is just something that came to me, is that most people think the starting point of their life is when they're born. Maybe in conception, but there's no real memory of being in utero. So people think that when you're born, you're completely innocent and there's nothing there from your past, right? You don't have a past when you're born. So the circumstances you're born into are not happening from something that's happened in the past, because they don't believe in a past life. They believe that that's, your soul wasn't created when you were conceived. Your soul was already in existence before that. So your soul had previous existences, whether it was here or somewhere else, or it came from somewhere. And unfortunately, Jesus believed in past lives, but the Christian religion is, they can't have you know that you had past lives, because that wipes out their whole thing about Jesus being the only Son of God. Jesus had past lives. And so, this idea that he was the only Son of God gets wiped out by the idea of past lives and future lives. But Jesus talked about past lives. It's documented in the Gnostic Gospels and other places. And he talked about his own past lives, and there's this idea, like, for example, that he and John the Baptist shared a past life, and some of the disciples, or maybe all of them. And they came in together as a soul family. So if you have a soul, and your soul has an intention, your soul has a plan, you have a past when you're born. And your past is going to affect your immediate circumstances of what you're born into. And most people can't, especially people who love victim consciousness, want to say, recently I showed a video where a young woman was going, I didn't ask to be born. And that's, this is another name for this video. I didn't ask to be born. These all could be names for this video. Because your soul and God and, your spiritual support team and everything that's, in the etheric world created your circumstance. Your soul created your body and your circumstances that you're born into. And so the things that are happening to you as a child have been created by the past. Whatever you were doing in the past that needs to be worked out, and the circumstances of your life are created there. From the color of your skin to your sex to your to any number of things, right? Your family and, where you are born in the world, your culture. These are all choices that have been made for your specific, best opportunity to evolve spiritually and complete your soul's plan. And so if you understand that something happened in past existence that you don't have access to, because your, memories, you don't have many memories of your childhood, but whatever your memories are, and you can start seeing the mistakes you've made and the work you've put in and the things that you've done have manifested a future, have created, your present now, and that you've, become somebody, and through, your efforts and your choices and your, whatever it is, thoughts and goals and things, you've now manifested your present. But you can't trace that back from a past existence when you're a kid, so that's a big part of it. This is the idea of samskaras, the things you take with you when you die that have to be worked out and condition your next experience, your next life here. And so I'm not fully remembering what I wanted to say, but it had to do with, this idea that everything is transitory, right? Everything can be taken away from you and will be, because you can't hold on to everything. And holding on to everything is the problem right now. We have an economy that should have collapsed. We have, a social system and, like a dumbing down of the masses. That's not even an idiocracy type situation where people are de-evolving. And that's, the biggest thing. And then a disconnect from God and a breakdown of the family and everything that's happening should have, made the system collapse already. I mean, it's already collapsed. But it has momentum going forward. Like, it's whatever momentum's built up, and then our collective thoughts and fears of living without the system have propped it up, right? And, what's ever going on with that and whatever's happening to prevent what, the inevitable death of our system, at least a partial collapse of the system in one way or another. An inability for people to either realize or accept that the collapse of the system is what's best, right? Because, it isn't what's best for our egos and our lifestyle and us personally. Like, many of us wouldn't survive that. The older folks, certainly, people, in their 40s and 50s and all the way up, it's almost impossible for them to, restart their life in this direction, to relearn and I mean, if you have very low skill base and the system is no longer going to provide for you, then, I mean, what are you going to do, right? Like, what can you possibly do to become a new person and figure out how to, totally different orientation to life. So there's no preparation there. There's no knowledge base. There's no, that people are just dead inside. They're walking zombies. And this is all predicated on this idea that we're not going to die. We don't think about it. Like, people do not prepare for their death, don't think about their death, don't think about what's waiting for them next, don't think about a future life or a future life of their soul somewhere and what that's going to be like because of their current actions and things. Maybe on people's deathbeds they have these regrets and they have these, come to Jesus moments or whatever you want to call them. But in reality, it's too late. I mean, I guess, having some good thoughts at the end of your life and regrets, sure. You would have liked to do better, but, your opportunity has passed you by, right? Your opportunity to do better and to, ensure a better future for your soul and future version of yourself in future lives has passed you by, right? You've failed to, navigate the terrain of your samskaras and your existence in a way that can produce a positive outcome where you're moving forward and not backwards. And having this idea that you're dying, you're in the death process, and today could be your last day. I mean, when people live in circumstances like that, war-torn circumstances and desperate circumstances, they're more alive, right? They're more alive because they're aware that this could be it, and they're more grateful, and they're more whatever. The opportunity is more present, unless they're, traumatized all the time, which is the other, downside of that. And when you're in survival mode, you don't have time to think and, be philosophical and have a strong overview of your life because you're just trying to get through the day. So there's the downside of that as well. But if you have, you're not in desperate circumstances, but you're aware of your mortality in a way that's not morbid, like I was saying earlier, you have this advantage where you're not wasting time. This is another throwaway day where you're just going through the motions. But anyways, let me get into the. I'm not sure that's all I wanted to say, but that's as much as I can remember. I'm going to go eat breakfast. I'm going to eat breakfast, then I'll edit the part I already did about the overpopulation, and then I'll wrap this thing up maybe with some more video clips, or we'll see how it all goes. Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I wanted to do a quick introduction here. This is a couple of days. This is January 17th. This video won't be up till 3 or 4 days from now. But if you're a person who watches other people's videos and hears them talk about some theory, this theory or that theory, overpopulation in this case, or flat earth, or QB stuff, and then you announce someone else's theory that you've done no research into or thought about, you're not introspective, you haven't been on any kind of a journey yourself, you haven't gone anywhere, you haven't done anything in your life where you have a knowledge base, then you're not a truther. You're just regurgitating some other person's viewpoint, which is what sheeple do, right? So I want to start here. This is the NFL. And you see, these are the NFL cities, right? These are cities and places where the NFL franchises are. Here's another picture here, kind of a better picture. And you see, okay, there's the New England Patriots, and then in New York you have 3 football teams, the Bills, the Giants, and the Jets. And right below that you have Philadelphia, which is right there, then Baltimore, which is right here, then Washington, D.C., which is right here. Then down the coast, you have the Carolina Panthers, the Atlanta Falcons, and 3 more teams in Florida, right? So this is the majority of teams are right in this area, 1/3 of the country here. You can see this third of the country has the majority of football teams. There's a total of 32 football teams. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 right here. I think this is actually 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 right here on the West Coast. A third of the football teams are right on, the East Coast of America, right on basically the ocean. And then here in the middle of the country, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I guess 10, 11, 12, 13, right in the middle of the country. That's the greater number of teams in terms of the small area. And then out west, which is about half the country here, there's 6 teams, right? And so the majority of teams are right here around the East Coast in a small area in terms of, teams per area, where you have 2 states that have 2, small states, New York and Florida, compared to, say, Texas that has 2, and California that has 3 over here. It has 2 here, right? California only has 2 massive states, and these, big states out west here. I mean, there's, only 1 football team here in the Denver area. Like half of the, a good fifth of the country here has 1 or 2 football teams, and the Arizona Cardinals and the Denver Broncos, right? Because the majority of people live on the coast. You see, the majority of teams are on the coastal areas, and then you have teams up here around the Great Lakes, because people live near water. Most animal life, it's like 80 or 90% of animal life starts in the marshlands right along the coast. All these things, all these shrimp and all these types of, microbes, and then all these baby fish that are born there. Most of the life on Earth is hatched and born near the coast. And of course, people live by the coast in these various places, and they live by water. If it isn't by the ocean, it's by lakes and rivers and things like this. And so when people talk about overpopulation and that you can fit all the people in the world in Texas and they could all have an acre, which is not accurate, but that's some stupid thing that's going around. people misunderstand population density. These are all overpopulated areas. This is extremely overpopulated. If you drive up here from Virginia all the way up to Maine, it's one long urban city. You don't see any open land like you do in the middle of the country here. Of course, there's no water here. There's water issues in the middle of the country. Beautiful places. I've lived here in the West. Beautiful. Utah and New Mexico and Nevada and Arizona and these places. Beautiful. Like just, phenomenally nice places. But there's no water there, right? And, the overpopulation happens in cities in these areas too, as well too, to quote Federman. So this is the population density. This is the United States at night. This is where all the people are. Then you have these cities here that are all overpopulated as well, but the population density here being in the East Coast. This is New York City, these monster cities, right? Millions of people. This is Los Angeles. This is Kolkata in India, where there's 40 million people. I've been to these cities. If you've never seen cities with 20 million people, 16 million people, and 40 million people, and there's even, bigger cities and things like this, the urban area. And this is in Mumbai, right? This is Mumbai, India. And this is Shanghai in China, which is 20-something million people. Kolkata has 40 million people. Mumbai, what used to be Bombay, has 20 million people. And we're not even talking about the greater city area, right? But these places have huge population density. And overpopulation happens in small areas. It doesn't happen globally. Like there's not an overpopulation of, say, gazelles globally, but there could be some in small areas in Africa, right? When they have locust swarm, it's not a global problem. It's a country problem, right? When there's overpopulation of any species, it's always a small, dense area. And there is overpopulation of people all around the globe, especially around coastal areas and these major cities that are sucking up resources from every possible direction. So I made that on the 17th, and the first introduction that you heard was from yesterday, the 18th, and today's the 19th, and I did a little bit of a follow-up this morning already. And one of the things I forgot about, I want to get into the overpopulation thing because that's all tying into this thing here. But one of the things that I forgot about that I wanted to say this morning was, there's things that are just destined to happen. And you can work tirelessly, assiduously to reverse those things, stop those things. I mean, people do that, and it's going to happen no matter what. No matter what you do, you can't stop it from happening. One of the falsities in the New Age community is you can manifest anything you want. You can manifest wealth, you can manifest good health, you can manifest, prosperity, whatever, positive things you can say. And that's not true. I had a talk with a preceptor who does Saj Marg, and he was doing New Age things, and he tried a bunch of these different techniques to manifest things, and they didn't work, right? And he realized it was all BS, and then he started Saj Marg, which is, some of it's your effort and your will force, and some of it is your own, you can change your destiny, you can change your, certain things about the trajectory of your life. But other things you just have to surrender to. You just have to accept they're going to happen. And that's the problem we're having now. And like in America, you're told, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you can make it happen. And when somebody fails, they think, there's this idea that that's 100% your fault. And it's not. Failure isn't always your fault, or even partially your fault in some circumstances, because some things are just destined to happen. And I found this Whispers of the Brighter World message here that I, was talking about yesterday in an entry into my 136th edition of the Journey series. And it was about working with your hands is why I saved it more than anything else. But it came out in 2000 and probably 7 or 8 it was released. But it was Tuesday, September 10th, 2002, 10 a.m. And I'm going to just read the message here. The time has come for human beings to seriously reflect on the ill effects of this industrial civilization that is destructive for the planet. There are many who utter cries of alarm which are not heard. The biggest polluters close their eyes on this aspect of things, seeing only profit and their well-lined bank accounts. Everything will stop by force of circumstance. Huge cataclysms will destroy what constitutes the industrial wealth of this century. This wealth does not benefit the poor countries, which are completely forgotten by the big owners of the world's capital. These comments are not politically oriented. Rather, we note an irrefutable fact that this is serious for the future of humanity. Only the power of raging elements will be able to change the economic system. It will have to make a fresh and healthy start for the earth and for human beings. By returning to basics and simplicity through a more human way of working, human beings have lost their taste for effort. They will have to relearn how to make use of their hands together with their minds. The rich who have lost everything will become very poor, and the current poor will become even more destitute. Only the ones to keep their treasure will be those who have nurtured in their hearts, haloed with the divine love, Babaji Maharaj. The thing about that is, like, most people can agree with most of that message, whether they're liberal or conservative. I'm even sheeple. There's just talk about it. My wife and I were rewatching season 4 of Yellowstone, and there's a guy, Taylor Sheridan, who makes that show, is kind of a cowboy in real life, whatever he is, right? Western person, maybe right-leaning Republican-based type person, and he has his character say the John Dutton, the Kevin Costner character, was saying we won't be around in 100 years, right? And this kind of doomsday scenario stuff is always there, but it's usually a fringe type of thing. Even if it's going to happen, it's fringe. Every civilization has end of the world people. They're just there. And it's inevitable. Every religion, every culture has predictions of like sort of end of world, end times type of stuff. Of course, it's in the Bible. It's in these other, religious texts and books and prophecies and the Mayan calendar and the Aboriginal people and all these, native peoples. There's stories about it, right? Of course, there's like the city of Pompeii in the Bible. There's these cities and, stories of destructed, this lost city of Atlantis, these things, right? And you can go and find ruins all over the world where there was giant, where there was, big civilizations, successful empires that have collapsed. And then just recent history of empires, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, these empires that were there. There's Chinese empires. There's various empires that have come and gone. And, it's in the Mahabharata, all this stuff that happened where at one point India was like the center of the world, and there was just this, what was coming out of India, right, at that time. And there's ancient cultures, and you can find it. Some of it's there, some of it's at the bottom of the ocean when there was, civilizations that were built when there was an ice age, and the water receded, and there was a landmass from all the way from Florida down to South America, a big landmass, and then of course in other places in the world. And then the ice melted, and these civilizations are now buried under the sea. They were just flooded out of existence. And so this happens, right? I've talked about this in various, ways and forms and things. And so empires collapse. So that's a reality. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a, there's no empire that ever lasts forever. That would be crazy and delusional to think that way, that our empire would last forever. Right? And they all thought they were going to do that, right? Every civilization, and there's more advanced civilizations that were here, far more advanced civilization, right? There's a thing where I was listening to Dr. Berg, and then he was talking about antibiotics. He said there's tetracycline in mummies, in Egyptian mummies, right? And I've talked about the Egyptian mummies recently, and UFOs and aliens and things like this, and all that stuff. But tetracycline, they had antibiotics, and now I looked it up, and they said, there's a couple articles, ancient Nubians drank beer laced with antibiotics. And so ancient, these people in these places, this is 2,000 years ago, people have been using antibiotics, right? These, antibiotics for moles and things like this. And so if you think about that, then you have to doubt the origin stories, our origin story, which I've been covering, and I read a whispers in a recent video here. I talked about how our true history of human beings, and the possibility of genetic manipulation and us being, a slave being created here that has a shortened lifespan. In the movie Blade Runner comes from a book. I think the guy's name is Philip K. Dick. He writes those books, but the movie Blade Runner, they had these clones who were superior. Some of them intellectually, all of them physically, but they had a lifespan of only 4 years, and that was to prevent them from taking over for the normal people, the non-cloned people. And so that kind of goes with what's happened with our shortened lifespans here when people used to live thousands of years, right? But if you take that into consideration, that they have blocked us from knowing the true origin of our species, it's been warped in our religions and our science and all these things. When they find scientific discoveries and they hide them, archaeological discoveries, and they hide them from us. And then you put that into the idea that civilizations have collapsed and we have these ruins all around us. And then you look at what's going on right now. Most people, liberals and conservatives and sheeple, all have this sense that we're entering into a time where the civilization is fragile and there are going to be big changes and big population reductions and big changes to our lifestyle and our whole orientation to life. The dream, the American dream, the internet, these things that we dominate our existence, and what we go about our lives, pleasure-seeking lives and things like this will be taken away, and then we'll have to regress into working with our hands in this whisper message, right? We'll have to go back to providing for ourselves in a village type situation, in a communal type situation, growing food and interacting with nature and getting back to a more primary labor type of situation. And this isn't something that the elite are doing to us. The problem with the truth community is the obsession with the elite. If you hear a truther just talk about elite this, elite that, especially someone's been around for a while, like they've stalled out, right? They came in at an entry level and they're spinning in circles like a frog jumping around a well, because the elite are going to be gone. The power structure is going to be gone. And then who are you going to blame, right? Like it's not, they're not going to be in charge of this, this situation very much longer. And then what? You blame God, you blame, at what point do you realize that we've all contributed, right? There's evil things that the system is doing that we're all a part of. We're all contributing one way or another. We're all, we're complicit, but we're also engaged in doing work that is destructive and anti-God work that goes against the will of God. We're making choices that don't align with our souls, and whether we're forced to do it because of the system or whether because we don't know any better, or we're not, like, we want to think of ourselves as good people, but we want to ignore that we're all participating in this demonic system. And not to beat yourself up about it either. Like, just accept that. Like, that's what we, have to do to some extent. We have to participate, whatever it is. And if we think about it coming from God and, everything that we're doing is, we're doing, not, make that up, but find out what the will of God is and do it, right? And then just accept that, part of that is engaging with the beastly system, because you can't get away from it until it changes. But that whispers message I read to you is one of many which give a clear understanding of the collapse of the system. And Babaji, the second master of the Sajmark system, wrote about this in his book Reality at Dawn, and he talked about my vision, the vision of the future. And he said that the next civilization will be built on the bones and ashes of the current one, and no civilization will survive in the future without spirituality as its base. So that Whispers books came out with these prophecies, and there was already stuff in there, predictions about what was going to happen to the structure of the world and things that Babaji had written about. And it came out in 2005, after the big event 2001. And then these messages kept on coming out that, like this one, was released probably via email in 2011. It was in a book called, Whispers of the Brighter World, third edition, third revelation, which was probably released in 2008 or 9. And my family and I were working on a homestead, trying to create a homestead, and ran into the block that we needed a community, right? That you couldn't go any further without a community. And so I went back to the current master of the system when he was just nominated, and he kind of agreed with this. This is Dodgy back then when he was not like a sellout shill, who's lost his way. He was, just talking about this in a Journey series video, and all of them. It's it's pretty it's pretty brutal, right? But he was better then, and then Chargy, the current master at that time, was on his way out. He was real poor physical health, and then all the people, and they read these books and they believed in these books. Some of these people, they read these books obsessively, the Whispers messages. I mean, much more so than I did, and they believed in these teachings, and this was their primary goal in life. This system. And almost none of them were willing to do anything to prepare for the predictions that were given. It was like stunning to me that they weren't even, they couldn't even have a conversation about it. And they were condemning me and my family for learning old ways and skills. And then this message came out, and I said, look, it says people in the future are going to have to work with their hands. And, there's people in India who, the labor in India, in the caste system, they really look at it, the educated people, the upper echelon people, the upper caste, the Brahmins and these other castes, and then people who have made it financially. They look at primary labor as dirty, like much more so than we do in America. In America, we do it. We look down at farmers. We look down at migrant workers and, whatever it is. It's just built in our society to think that you have a white-collar job and you're above that kind of stuff, right? And you no longer have to do that stuff. But it's something we all have to do. It's, it's fun to do. Like, I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed being out in nature. And, I didn't know I was going to enjoy it as much as I did, or I would, back in 2003, 4, 5, when we were starting to homestead. And then what we're doing now, my wife and I really enjoy doing it. And, it's sometimes painstaking, sometimes difficult, sometimes it's just, frustrating, and you're sometimes fighting nature. Nature seems to be almost lining up against you or making it harder. And there's always something new you didn't consider. And, it's a big learning curve. And of course, I don't need to do it where it's a question of life or death and starving and having equipment and modern day things that we have now, right? It's, it's a little bit different, but it makes you into a complete person, right? Like it fills holes and gaps that you didn't know were there. You're a much more functional person. Like, where you have one skill, and I've talked about this, when our ancestors were lured off the farm and the tribes, and they were forced into cities, or, they chose to go into cities, whatever it was. They gave up all these skills, and those skills were looked down on. People who were, they looked down at the Native American people as savages, and, people who were laborers and farmers, the aristocracy and the rich people and the, the lords and the kings and the, all these things. And these, people who ruled over the, the so-called dumbed down masses and were, not engaging in this type of labor, and they had slaves and servants and whatever it was, they looked down on those people. So much so there's people who, they used to have dressers. They wouldn't even dress themselves. Never mind make their own clothing or make their own, grow their own food or make their own meals, right? And you get devoid from reality of your, every animal has to, engage in primary labor to survive. And that's been lost. And we need to reclaim that, because it's warped people so much so that you have kids today who live in a cyber world, and they're no longer able to do a job even, right? So, the deal was you do a job, a specialized skill for 8 hours a day, as it later on came out, whatever it is, back then, 12 hours, whatever it was in the beginning. But you do one job, and then all the other jobs were done by other people, and you had a collective work and money and these things, and it made life easier. You had more free time, and you could, have nicer houses and running water, and you had these privileges that have grown over time. And so now the kids today can't even do that 1 hour, that 8 hour work day, because they're lost in a cyber world, a world that's, not even, physically real. It's not the third dimensional world that we live in, where they're not even aware of their bodies so much so anymore. And physical reality around them. They have another, reality that they call this in the real world, IRL. They got a term for in the real world because they're lost to it. I mean, it's just going in the wrong direction. So, I was dumbfounded by these people who do the Sajmarg meditation and how they just wouldn't look at these teachings. They couldn't deal with it. Of course, some of them are older, boomer, hippie generation. They're now older, and there's a large group of people who do it that are old, but they were unwilling. And, I found this with I believe that Sajmarg, the connection to divinity, and that's just how that Whispers of the Brighter World message ended. At the very end of it, it reads, the ritual will have lost everything, will become very poor, and the current poor will become more destitute. The only ones to keep their treasure will be those that have nurtured it in their hearts, haloed with divine love. And that's, the treasure of connecting to divinity within you, which is what the Sajmarg system's about, right? And that, that this is going to be necessary for people to survive and to flourish and build a new system based in divine principles, right? Spirituality as its base. And this is the system that's been given for this time, right? There's a spiritual system, not the religions which are just relics of the past that have lost their way, not past things, right? But a living system that exists now. And the people who do this system suck. Like they've faltered and failed with Daji, and they've just haven't been able to navigate that issue. And that's been a real bummer for me to see. And then other people just can't gravitate to it. There's lots of people who have tried it through this YouTube channel. Other people have heard of it and just, poo-poo it, this whatever. But they're, going in a direction that is, a materialistic direction, trying to save a system that can't be saved. A population that's going to have to be reduced. And they're just, people in the truth community and just everybody are looking for answers and, quick fixes to something that's already destined to fail. It's destiny. It's over. Its life cycle is over, right? It had a period of time, and it's, whatever's going to be left, whatever changes are going to be in place, whatever our lifestyle is like, and it's going to be different all over the globe. All these civilizations, like the ancient Egyptian civilizations, they look at the people that were around there, and there's primitive people. But there's lots of primitive people now. There's lots of people living in huts all over the world, in cities. You go to India, and there's huge sections of the the overpopulated cities that are 26 million people in Chennai, which I saw, and more people in these other places, these other cities, and these cities are filled with people living in primitive huts and things like this. There's primitive people everywhere, and there's people who are doing your labor, your agricultural labor and things that have double-digit IQs, and they live short lives, and they don't have the kind of intellect and the capacity for abstract thought and critical thinking skills that we all enjoy. And we're a minority, right? We're it's less than 40% have the ability for abstract thought. I mean, you don't understand the levels of primitive people that they could look back on and say, oh, in 2023 and this generation, it was a bunch of primitive people, and the cities are gone, and all these things. They look at the civilization, but they say, oh, they didn't have anything, right? The computer chips and things, all these things that we enjoy now in terms of technology are broken down, and after 5,000 years, 10,000 years, they're gone. And then there's just tools and stuff, right? They look at the tools and they're like, oh, these were primitive people, right? They do, these cities buried under, whatever it is, dust and debris and things, and they dig them up, and it looks like primitive structures compared to, what we have now and what they'll have in the future, these types of things. But, there's going to be a time where the system goes down, and it's happening, and most people agree it's happening, but aren't doing anything about it. And the first step is to connect to God internally. And why aren't people gravitating to that? And even people who do it, like who have the advantage of doing this in the Sajmarg system, not these goofy New Age things that are coming out that assuage the ego and are egocentric and make a person think that they're creating a better material life instead of using their material life to benefit their soul's path. And your soul is your true essence. What your reason for existence is your soul's purpose, and not your ego's purpose. And that's been lost now. Anyways, like I said, I'm going to put this in that folder I've remembered. I'm going to wrap this one up here. I'm getting a little bit tired already. I've already started the day with 3 long voiceovers. But, we've reached a turning point, and, we can no longer go in the direction that we've been going on collectively and individually. And the people that can change will change, and everyone else is screwed. I mean, that's where we're at. And if you don't have the strength, and you're just worn out, you're assed out, you're bankrupt, and you don't have any prana, life energy left, and you're just beaten down by your circumstances, and you just don't have the capacity to reinvent yourself. I had to do that a couple of times in my life. It wasn't hard when I was in my 30s, because I didn't have much. I wasn't married. I didn't, when I started Saj Marg meditation, and I was wanting to change my, whatever it is, my orientation to life. And when I became a spiritual person, it was really a boost. I got a boost of energy. But when I was in my 50s and my marriage collapsed, and it was a blessing, but I had to reinvent myself. And then, now remarrying and having a new, lifestyle with, some better opportunities. Of course, the YouTube channel here and all these things, and where my point of view and the way I was viewing the world is more and more validated every day, than it was in previous years. But I've gotten older, right? And some of the changes I've already done in terms of embracing some of these homesteading skills and understanding how to do things, and improving my skill base. But as you get older, it's just harder and harder to adapt to things. It's harder and harder just to move from one city to another. It's harder and harder just to change your lifestyle. And that's just all, the way that is for older people who are in the back half of their life. And young people, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with them because they're so weak and pathetic right now, this generation, and stupid. And I mean, it's just, dummies who are locked into a cyber world. But many of them haven't, engaged and started using their life force. I mean, I'm sure it's drained to some extent by the internet and things like this, but, they're probably going to enjoy life a lot more once they get pulled out of their, cyber existence, when they have to be in the real world and they throw off some of their, weaknesses and things, and we'll see what happens, right? They're supposed to be these indigo children and, whatever it is. And, we'll see if that's true or not, and whether they emerge or whether they're able to embrace this change that's coming. But it's certainly upon us, right? I mean, everybody senses it, and, it's talked about, and it's in movies and TV shows, and people are aware of it, and, they want to blame one group or another. But in reality, it doesn't matter who's to blame. It's, what's going to happen when the system collapses. Because blame isn't going to feed you. Blame isn't going to keep you warm or, give you water and, all the rest of it. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.